can see the fans' point of view that football's selling its soul. As a fan, sometimes I see some things and it feels like everything is very, very money orientated, but I'm not sure that it's totally the case.
How do you acknowledge and respect the fact that they're the lifeblood and the foundation on which your teams have been built?
Welcome to The Attention Shift, a podcast where sports media gets debated like a VAR decision. Passionately, chaotically, and with none of us fully agreeing on the outcome, right?
Welcome back to The Attention Shift. I'm Joe Redfern. Who are you?
I'm Abyss.
And I'm Lee Redfern, apparently.
Okay, this episode we're going to be talking about football.
Oi, oi.
I mean, it comes up quite frequently, doesn't it? But here's the provocation. Is football selling its soul? How do clubs and leagues and even competitions balance global fandom with local supporters' interests, filling stadia, Club World Cup? Can clubs manage both? Can you manage local connections, that authenticity? Can you be a global media brand? Can you do both at the same time? Can both coexist? Who is going to kick us off?
Go on, Ed. I can see you breathing.
Yeah. Bristling.
We'll come back in 10 minutes.
Actually, Ed, I'll take this.
I can see the fans' point of view that football's selling its soul. As a fan, sometimes I see some things and it feels like everything is very, very money orientated, but I'm not sure that it's totally the case, right? You get to see lots of clubs at a grassroots level where they are the thing that holds the community together. Mm-hmm. I know from my own team's perspective, every time we're in the Premier League, you see things that come out from local councils and it's boosting the economy. Yeah. And I don't think that's football selling its soul, right? Because it does have that impact on I guess mindsets of people in that local area and how they feel about their own sort of town or city. I think there's more connectivity that when it comes to sort of towns and big cities. I think it'd be hard to sort of say how I'm sure Manchester City Council do, how Man United or Man City drives the economy in Manchester. And I know it does from having worked at Man U and seeing bus loads of people arriving at Old Trafford to go in the club shop and have ground tours. So, ultimately there is a tourism play to it. But I totally understand why people think that football's selling its soul, because you see some things that go on. Yeah. And I think we talked about the Club World Cup, right? As was that a genuine football play, or was that a money play? And when it happened, and when you've even got people within the game saying, why the hell are we doing this? Then, you could probably understand that.
Are you saying that there's two parallel ecosystems then? You've got the super clubs.
The haves and the have-nots.
Yes. Yeah. that can function like global media companies. And then, I mean, my family, we're Stockport County season ticket holders. That's not a global media club.
But a club massively on the upright that we're doing really, really well. If I think back when I was watching my team in the 90s, we had a real rivalry with them, and then they went right down to the depths, went non-league, and then slowly but surely they built themselves up again. They come back through, and I think now I just wonder as well, is it any coincidence that Stockport as a place as well has started to really get a almost like a confidence about itself over the last 10-15 years. At the same time, the football club has started to rise back up the leads again, have a confidence about itself as well. It'd be really, really hard to suggest so, but it seems a massive coincidence because I've seen, again, my own town have a similar kind of
and there is definitely that community feeling. Like I said, I see it firsthand on a weekly basis. But then if that is true, does that also mean that some of the bigger clubs are losing that touch with the community? What do you think?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because if you think about like the clubs like Wrexham, for example, who are of course now got a global fan base, or even now Swansea City with like Snoop Dogg investing in them as well. These are clubs who would have been, no one would have known about them. And actually this is great for them. This is great for their economy. And I don't think they've lost their connection with their local fans. Arguably as a Man United fan, I'm based down south and I get the stick all the time for being a Man United fan down south.
Plastic fan.
Plastic fan. And again, it used to be the case again, it used to be a case of, if you go to Thailand, they used to all be Man United fans and now they're Man City fans. But does that mean you're less valuable as a fan? I don't think it does. I don't think you can say that it's just because you don't live in an area or you're global, you can't turn up every week. Even if you got the opportunity, it doesn't make you less of a fan. But going back to, does it, is football losing its soul? I've got 5 shock stats for you. I'm going to throw you in.
We need to get you a t-shirt.
Please shock stats.
Stato.
Yeah. So 57% of fans believe football is more corrupt than other sports. And in the UK specifically, 60% of fans believe FIFA has been corrupt in recent years. Stat 2, loyal fans are the most disillusioned. So should football care about its fans' trust? Apparently loyal fans rated on integrity, inherent organisational procedure, more negative about their clubs than average casual fans. So nearly 30% of non-football fans estimated that nearly 30% of matches are fixed. Still, that's crazy. And then shot stat 3, women's football fan base will surpass 800 million fans by 2030, up nearly 40%. So that's one of the few sports that is growing. Potentially on the flip side, that has, it's got its soul still and is doing it. And yeah, like scandals do hurt enjoyment. 43% say scandals reduce how much they've enjoyed football in recent times.
I'd love to understand the context there of the match fix in particular shock stat, because I don't have a feeling of. I mean, look, it's right. You watch your game, right? You watch your team, and as has happened to us a couple of times this season, last minute goal or last minute penalty. But the reality is, when I watched it, I was like, yeah, but he was a bloody idiot for handballing it. Yeah. It was a penalty. Like, whichever way you want to look at it, where there's a problem is the consistency, right? And I'm not getting into VAR and stuff like that. Do I think that what happened was corrupt? No.
It's the betting scandals, right? Like, Ivan Toney getting done. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say he was match fixing, but he was definitely betting. There was a massive case in Italy, for a long time where, one of them, was it Juventus that got relegated? One of the big clubs got relegated because of the match fixing scandal. So the stat.
Calciopoli.
Yeah, the stat there you go that depth into. There's a study called "Should Football Care About Its Fans' Trust?" And it says loyal fans rated on all dimensions of integrity, which was inherent organizational procedural. So in the integrity of, inherent integrity of a club, for example, were more negative than the average casual fan. So, loyal fans estimated that about 20% said they couldn't trust, were disillusioned and didn't trust their club or the league.
I mean, if you think about it, in an era where conspiracy theories get traction on social media because they get the most attention, and also AI making it harder and harder to spot things that are fake, really there's an opportunity for sport to capitalize on that. And if we're talking about football, let's say football, because it used to be that that's one thing that you couldn't easily fix. When you've got 22 players running around a field kicking a football, it's quite hard to, to fudge it in a way that you can just generate something with AI, or you can sit and come up with a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. That said, I think it comes under much more scrutiny when it's very easy for people to go, oh, well, they're clearly on the take then, or they're throwing.
There have been some obvious examples, but I think it's a combination of everything, right? It's a combination of the dynamic pricing, which was at the Club World Cup, which is also being done at the World Cup ticketing now. So the first ticket release was dynamic pricing. So again, you don't trust the organisations. People feel there's too much of it. So the soul of it. Again, the Club World Cup, whether that was a success or not, no one wanted it. No one said, do you know what we really need this summer is another football tournament. And I think that's part of that sort of, like we've talked about before, that sort of commercialization and kind of like feel like you're being rinsed all the time. So
with that, so that takes away from the authenticity argument then, doesn't it? If it's just more because it's commercial success then is not compatible with that kind of authenticity, is it?
Interesting. I mean, again, I've got stuff for you as well. So there was a report I was reading, and I can't for the life of me remember where it was, but that if the big 6 clubs continue to alienate their core local fan base, the impact could be as much as 10% hitting revenues in the long term. So it's about 221 million, and that's just for the clubs alone. And then obviously that starts to then go down the pyramid itself. Now I know for a fact that the way that Man City think about their strategy is. And I don't know how United think about it, right? That they think, yes, we are a global entity, but we have to own the local audience. And they go out of their way to make sure that they stay very local. And living in Manchester, I do see how many City fans you do sort of come across, and especially where I live, which is sort of that side or the United side. There are lots and lots of City fans in that area that I live in. And I spoke to people who are United fans who live there, said they never used to see that when they were growing up. And City have really gone out of their way to try and own that local audience, because they're very much aware of this potential problem.
Well, United moved, so, historic, people who've had a season ticket for like over 10 years, they've actually moved them out of their seats to relocate them so they can have more corporate seating. And that says that just kind of says it, says it all to you as a fan. Then how much do you mean if that's
and I don't suppose it's about it's not necessarily about the fact of moving; it's how you move them. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know the nuance of how they've done that. Yeah.
And is it a case of they're not thinking? I mean, obviously they're building a new stadium, but that there's they're pricing out those local fans on whom the success of the club has been built, and replacing them with those traveling fans that are corporate fans that are willing to spend a bit more. Is it not the case that really they need to be prioritizing kind of this longer term value? I mean,
the Bundesliga do it really well, right? The Bundesliga,
they have the 50+1 ownership rule,
and they don't charge. It's cheap to go, and they've actively said. I think it was a Bayern Munich CEO. I think you may have said this before, Ed, which was like he came out and said, I mean, it's not in my interest to increase the pricing. Because and that's the sort of actually, and this is why people feel like football's losing its soul. I don't know if it is. It feels like it is, and I think it's coming to that point. It is coming to a point where fans will stop turning up. You see all the fan protests about ownership. Lots of different clubs these days. Sheffield Wednesday at the moment having issues with their own. And it's just finding it hard. I mean, you don't see this though, Joe. Like gaming, for example.
No, and it's interesting because I'm not as close to football as you two are, but I look at spaces like Roblox and see the football fandom that's evident on there. But actually, it's more evident in fan-made games that aren't owned by FIFA. They're not club branded. Bundesliga's been on there, and Premier League is looking at its strategy on the platform. FIFA didn't have a great start on Roblox and they came away, but they're rethinking it. But the most successful football games on there are ones made by fans. You've got Blue Lock Rivals, which is the anime football game, which we've spoken about before. You've got Street Soccer. You've got 3v3. So fandom's alive and well. And the interesting point, we were talking about this tension between community and global success. You've got millions of concurrent players in those football games, and they're playing from all over the world. You've got teenagers in North America. You've got a big community that play out of Asia. They're all in there because they love football. So that tells me that there's a healthy kind of global fandom. So how do you bring those in? How do you keep your local fans? How do you still service them? How do you acknowledge and respect the fact that they're the lifeblood and the foundation on which your teams have been built, but actually also have a strategy for those fans, not plastic fans, have a strategy for those fans that will only ever be your international fans. And I don't think the two are mutually exclusive, really.
So is it, so actually this is the opportunity then to actually lean into that fragmentation, right? The fragmentation exists, and we're not saying local good, global bad, right?
No.
It's just kind of like it's
both good.
101 and multi-strategy, right? You ultimately create different strategies for different audiences. So how do clubs start to, again, really connect with their local audience, but also then connect with that more casual fan? Look, lots of those casual fans might never spend any money with you, might never come to the stadium, might not do anything that impacts you in any way, shape or form.
Well, they might watch your matches.
They might watch your matches, but is that, you could argue, it is impacting me commercially because that drives TV rights. So there is still, hard to measure, but there is still that. But how do you start to create these different strategies for these different fragmented audiences?
And that's something that I was speaking about recently in terms of the old singular funnel. I don't think works anymore for fandom.
No.
It's not one fan on one journey and you're trying to shove them down to the bottom of the funnel. If anything, it's lots of different funnels in lots of different places. You can equally have a successful strategy for your teenage fan base in Indonesia as your fan base in Salford. And they still have values. They bring different value, but actually no less valid. I think it's really interesting how you brought up the plastic fans. It's been a while since I heard that terminology.
I still do get it as being a Southern United
but that
fan.
implied that it wasn't real. It wasn't solid. It was flimsy and cheaply made. And I don't think necessarily you can think about fans that don't physically visit the stadium in that way anymore.
I've been lucky enough to go a few times to Old Trafford, and I'm lucky enough I'm going to go again in December. But there's a stat like 99% for the NBA, for example. They say 99% of fans will never set foot on a court, right? And it's the same in football. Take Premier League, for example. And I think that's the balance, which is you want to keep your local community because they are the things that kind of built it up in the first place, which made it successful, made it global, or made it nationwide. But I think there is still, if there's someone like, I know, so who's coming from Thailand or Australia or anything, there still should be an opportunity for those fans to be able to, if they, there should be a reserve section, if you like, to say like this for an international fan to come over and do it, because it's a once in a lifetime experience. Regardless of the result, there is no better experience than seeing live football.
It's interesting there, and I think that's where I think clubs could certainly lean more into the match day rituals that local fans go through and give that like a global.
Take them to the pub.
Because what I don't see a lot of from a content perspective, and I talk a lot about this whenever I speak to any club, like once you sold all your tickets on a match day, that's you done, right?
That's it. Yeah,
it's try and rinse another £5 out of me for this or for that, but it's finite. But actually, to try and take that match day ritual and somehow contextualize from a content perspective that's breaking out of that, because ultimately you're not in control of the actual live game itself, but you are in control of what I call like the live moment, which could be 72 hours, right? It's the build up, it's the thereafter, and how you take, that feeling. Look, yes, you can't put like going for a pint, but you can go behind the scenes with the fans in those places where the fans are and hear about how they feel, whether it's good, whether it's bad, give people those kind of experiences. I don't see a lot of that, and we've seen a bit of the fan zones abroad as well, and look, and they are costly to put on, and look, I think the Premier League do a really good job of doing the ones that they do in the US.
The summer series
from everything I've heard, they're brilliant. And one of the pubs in Burnley actually hosted a pub in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago and did a really good job of giving that experience, but again, that's a very physical experience. It's really, really hard to do.
Arguably we've got the technology to do that. It's just how do we bring it to bear? How do we
But I think also then when you do those digital global experiences, bring that back into the local
exactly. Bring it
too,
into
so
it,
you're then connecting the two things together.
Uniting the fans.
The technology's there to do that. That's not that hard to do.
No, it's not. No,
It's probably
okay.
And they tend to keep them like that. They never bring them together.
Yeah, absolutely. That feels like a good point for a break.
Yeah, for a hot take huddle.
Can't wait.
Okay, welcome to our second attempt at Hot Take Huddle. Slight rule change from last time. So based on some feedback from producer Will, you no longer get 2 minutes because apparently we all ramble on too long anyway. So we need to cut some time off the episode. So 30 seconds it is. So this week, we're going to be, the question is, either side of the debate is, if a club invests heavily in global marketing successfully, do local fans benefit or get left behind? So, as I'm a gentleman, ladies first. Joe, what side of the debate would you like to take first?
I'm going to argue you need to market globally to global fans.
So, which will ultimately benefit local fans.
It's my view, and it's
All right, hang on, wait. Producer
sorry,
Will.
hang on. Give us the ding.
Don't get us in trouble just yet. Ready, Will, and go.
Have a strategy for your global fans, because if you can convert even just a small proportion of global fans, and again, let's come back to Roblox. If you've got 23 million users in a game on a Saturday, if even a small proportion of those spend $1 on a new avatar jersey, then that's a huge amount of revenue. But they're just as important as the local fans. I'm going to use that example of Squid Game we were talking about before. You don't need to be Korean.
Quick, I'll let you finish. You started.
You don't need to be Korean to empathise with Squid Game. It's about the connection of fandom, and I think that's universal. So I think that there's a nice strategy for local and global, and let's figure out how we bring them together.
You're too liberties, honestly.
God,
I bet to get the same treatment.
You'll get fair treatment. All right. So, do local fans benefit, or are they getting left behind if you're marketing globally? Ed, ready? Well, let's go.
I don't, all this digital distribution of content and, look, remember me and the local fan, I want to go down to the pub, I want to walk down to the game, I want to walk in 5 minutes before the game, get my pie and have my match day ritual, and all of these TikToks and X's and YouTube, like, they're just not catering to me and who I am as a fan. It's about how I grew up and standing on the terraces and the smells that emanate from the toilets that have never been cleaned. It's like, I just feel like we're spending far too much time trying to think about fans in Korea rather than people actually from my local area.
Give you some liberties. Well,
I can't help but think if you live stream that, people in Korea would really want to watch that.
Well, thanks to Grandad Ed.
I'll be able to go to Korea. I'll never be able to go to Korea.
He spent his life celebrating
Get you a body
YouTube.
cam for next time, please.
That was brilliant.
I totally hate that viewpoint.
I know you do. I know you do. I was about to say that goes everything against your business, your company. But
I'm going to get
You're-
totally trolled for that now. It's going to get clipped up.
you were so passionate. I'm sorry, Joe. I've got to give it to him. I mean, Grandad Ed over here with his flat cap.
I should have brought my flat cap. Yeah, I should have
I'm
brought
always
that.
going to lose in a football argument versus you two. Let's face it.
I don't know, but in a marketing strategy argument, Joe, I had some face.
You did, but Joe, some great points in there, I think, actually. Now,
Absolutely.
leading back into the conversation, I think you made a really good point about, if you've got, what's it, £1 or $1 of your global fan base, if it's the top 6 clubs done that, they're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars. I think, what's the stat, Will? Come on, shout out.
Oh, that's putting him on the pressure. He's all right when he's pinging messages.
Exactly, he puts us on the spot with our 30
Well,
seconds.
he'll come back to us with that one, no doubt.
Come back to us,
Really
Will.
does
Come back to us on that. But so going back to the conversation then, is football losing its soul? I think I don't know, where are we on this? I mean,
I think it's changing. The market's changing. The way that we interact with anything as fans, whether it's football, whether it's, I don't know, tennis, whether it's crochet, whether it's chess, it's changing because of technology and because of the platforms that we spend a huge amount of our time on. Therefore, we need to have a bit of a sense check on who our fans are. Now, our fans did used to be that very finite, the local ones. They even lived within a certain radius. There was a geographical boundary to fandom. Well, that's gone away now. Yeah. That doesn't mean that they cease to be important. They still are. And I do buy your argument. Again, I used to go to Millmore when I was a kid, stand on the terraces watching Rotherham United.
My alter ego argument.
They are some of the greatest times that I can remember as a kid. But now, if you're Chelsea and you've got a huge number of fans that are willing to engage, they might not actually show up in the stadium, but they might watch matches internationally. They go into your Roblox game, they buy the shirts. Are they any less important to you than the ones that turn up week in, week out? I think they have different importances, but I don't think really you can prioritise one over the other.
And not to jump on the Wrexham bandwagon, right? But I think what they have shown, and look, the storytellers, right, Ryan and Rob, but what they have shown is that you can tell a local story to a global audience.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
I know for a fact now there are a number of football league clubs saying to the Football League, we want to be like them. It's like, yeah, but you don't have two guys from Hollywood. But the point is if you watch that series, they've found a really good balance between all the different individuals that make Wrexham what it is. Yeah. And that's really resonated with an audience in the US who the vast majority have never been to Wrexham, but lots more are now planning to do it.
So this comes back to the point we were talking about before. I'm just writing this article about what does universal appeal even mean these days? Because it's very different to what universal appeal meant like 15, 20 years ago. And with that, I was talking about kids' animation. So kids' animated series used to have the edges sanded off because you wanted it to sell globally. Yeah. So the locations of the stories didn't have cultural markers in them. You didn't have obvious accents. They were usually Western neutral or American because it increased the chances to sell. Now, we've got Squid Game that's really popular that came out of Korea. You've got Bluey came out of Australia. They have very Australian kind of accents and slang phraseology. What it means is really, underneath it, it comes down to that core of fandom. What speaks to you as a human, that human connection, but actually now, rather than that sanded down sameness we were talking about, that flavour on top only adds to the connection. So even though I was joking when I said you should be wearing a body cam when you're going, to get your pie and stuff, actually, I do think that is something that people want to, they identify with. Hearing Bluey's Australian slang in a family dynamic that can be a bit chaotic. It's parents and kids just trying to survive being a family. That actually now deepens the connection. So the Wrexham thing, I think it's a case in point. That's precisely why it was successful, because there was that storytelling, there was the local flavour.
And some really deep stories like illnesses and they didn't talked about the mining disaster and like
human connection.
But that's what makes Wrexham Wrexham. And every club has these stories. The
Sunderland one did a great
one as well. I was at a Football League event recently, and Henry Winter, the journalist, And I did not realise, right, the depth that he knew about what's going on in the Football League. He called out individuals at clubs right up and down the pyramid who are doing amazing work in their community, knew them by name, knew the projects that they're doing. And it was some project, you know, some of it was food banks, but it wasn't just about that kind of stuff, about homeless people. I was like, wow, I didn't realise the amount of stories, every bit as important as the Wrexham stories, right? They're going on across the football pyramid, and it's not just the small clubs, it's the big clubs too. And I think clubs end up in this really difficult position, right? Because fans complain all the time about losing their clubs, but they still expect that 100 million signing and titles. And the reality is there's only so many that win a trophy every year. You can't have both, right? There's got to be some kind of balance. And we talked earlier as well. One other thing I was going to say is, like, as a football fan, you know, I in terms of this idea coming back to losing its soul, I really bemoan the fact that clubs outside the top six don't go after the cups like they used to. Because you know what, the reality is my team is probably not going to win a title. But to have a cup run and maybe get to the quarters with that hope that we might get to the semi-finals, get a game at Wembley, it's probably the one thing that I can look forward to in the year. So when my club, for whatever reason, changes the whole team, not that I've seen it happen recently or anything, change the whole team, then we go and lose to a team 2 divisions below us, I'm like, well, why? I'm not going to pay to go to the games either. So I can understand some of these frustrations.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's, you know, like, Brent, you talk about community, like Brentford is my local team, do an amazing job around the community, and actually, like you said about, you know, cup runs are really important to fans, and I think maybe not commercially to a club, it's not that viable. You know, having a good FA Cup run, for example, is not for someone like Man United, probably not commercially that important. Actually, getting a Champions League spot is, but you know, something like that isn't that important. And I think that's the issue at the moment. Is the I don't think it's lost its soul. I think you're right, Joe. It's changing. Yeah. I think fandom, the way people consume content and ultimately the attention shift means that fandom has changed. Football hasn't caught up with the way that's not just football, but sports hasn't caught up with the way that championship's changed. So fandom as its heart has changed, being a sports fan, which means its soul is moving because you've got new souls, new younger generations of souls who consume differently. But then you've got this money, it ultimately feels like a money grab at the moment. That ultimately, I think it's not that. I don't think that football as a sport, you know, whether it's grassroots, it will always be that people will love it. It's a religion. That's why people go to non-league. That's why people go down play 11-a-side or 5-a-side with your mates, because you just love the game. But what we don't love is the money grab, because people haven't worked out how to, you know, what monetization is in this modern world, because all their historic ways of monetizing are being cut off. You know, media right deals are gone.
So you talked about soul there, right? So how do clubs protect their soul with all the challenges they've got going on around them? Leagues, fans, money, sponsorships. How do you protect your soul?
We spoke about story. I think that's one of the things that maybe a lot of football clubs feel is a bit low rent, or a bit manufactured, is telling stories. But inherent in every club is the stories. You spoke about it. Whilst we were off camera, I was talking about a windscreen shield in 1996 and how the whole of Rotherham tricked.
Whole life.
Story. Yes, the cup runs, stories. And that's what the Wrexham show really brought to the fore. Yeah. I don't think that for me is an opportunity that football clubs are really losing, and in a way would be a way for them to reclaim this kind of, okay, no, we do acknowledge what the soul of the community and the club is. We're going to acknowledge the history. We're going to acknowledge the characters. To your point, you know, the disaster that happened in Wales with the cop, talking about those things, they're still in people's memories. So actually, if we're saying that football is selling its soul, actually that's a way to claw it back. Okay, what is at the core of it? What makes people decide to go and spend some money and either watch the match or go to the game? And take away that kind of like, we need to just think about maximising revenue and commercial success on a global level.
I think you're completely right there, Joe. I think if I was a club right now, what I would be doing is I'd be getting international fans to do some user-generated content about their match day experience and their stuff.
They have their own history.
And they've got
Yeah,
their
of
own
course they do.
histories and the history of their fan clubs and their things. I'd do the same as you rightly talked about with your local clubs. I'd find your oldest fan, do some storytelling around that, and ultimately, that will help protect you as a club or as a league. And also the whole monetization, whether it's the Club World Cup or the dynamic pricing again on the World Cup price tickets, people will vote with their feet in their money if they just won't show up, and then that's going to ultimately take away from some of these experiences. We know from COVID, if you don't have people in the stadium, the football is not the same, and I think that's what it'll go back to. So yeah, tell your stories, do the right things, engage with your community, but not just on a local and a global level. And ultimately people will vote with their feet and their money by not showing up.
And I do think you optimize your chances of commercializing your sport if people have that connection with it, and that connection can come through those stories. And you just put me in mind of, didn't somebody from Thailand cycle from Thailand to the UK to go to a Man United match?
Yeah.
And that story was so compelling, and I know so many people who started following it, and then of course, like he got to the ground and was received almost a hero's welcome. Well, goodness me, if that isn't the perfect joining together of local and global.
But similarly, I mean, I've seen it down the years. I've had friends who work, a guy called Chris Gibson who worked for Burnley Football Club for a number of years. He organised bike rides. They went to France. We played Reims in the European Cup back in the 60s. He arranged the way they rode from there. And you see more and more fans doing it now. It's a fair value exchange, right? The fans want to do things for you. So really, really lean into it. And Wrexham have really, really leaned into that. They saw that the fans felt totally at their lowest ebb, but they knew there were stories there that they could tell, and they really did it. And there are plenty of other stories out there. We can't all be a Wrexham, but I think we can start telling those stories better and feel like the fans are part of the club, because they are.
And I do think it buys you a bit of grace.
Yes, it does.
If performance falters,
it's fine making mistakes.
If performance falters, if those stories have deepened that connection, you're going to give them a little bit more grace and stick with them.
Quote, I guess, again, to quote Roger Mitchell.
This feels like a wrap-up.
It is, yeah. To quote Roger Mitchell again, he said, there's a lot of investment going at sports, and sports is not an asset class. And actually, it's a community asset. And I think that's the way you save football, is ultimately to remember that ultimately at the heart of all of this is football is owned by everyone, not by the amount of money that you put into a club or into a league or federation, and trying to get a financial return on something that ultimately, yes, you might get some sustainable growth, but you're not going to get that, VC backed 15x that
you don't have an asset without a fan, do you?
Exactly. What a nice way to finish, Stu.
The greatest asset you could ever have.
Oh, there you go.
Look at this.
Cheery now.
Right in the feels.
Well, you too, yeah. Well, I go grab my sit back. No, very true. Very well said. Lovely way to wrap up. So, like, subscribe, all that fun jazz, and any good ideas for episode titles, email us at hello@attentionshift.media. That's hello@attentionshift.media. I've been Lee Radbourne.
I've been Ed Abbas.
And I'm Joe Redfern, and if you got to this stage, well done. Thank you for sticking with us.
Cheers.
Thanks, goodbye. That's it for this episode of The Attention Shift. Remember to like and subscribe and listen to us next time. And do let us know what you think. Email us at hello@attentionshift.media. That's hello@attentionshift.media. Goodbye.